thank you all for coming out on this morning. I know that we've had a couple informational sessions and we've had some large crowds. And so I'm hoping that this morning, the crowd being a little thinned out is a reflection of people having this information and starting the process of actually applying for these dollars. I want to start by saying that there was an update that was made last night associated with the deadline for these applications. I communicated to County Council a recommendation to extend the deadline to October the 14th. So October the 14th, which is a Friday, is now the new deadline. So if you are currently going through the process, we still certainly encourage you to complete that as soon as possible. But the deadline has actually been extended to October the 14th. Want to start by saying my name is Leonardo Brown, Richland County Administrator. And as we've talked about before on a couple of occasions, these American Rescue Plan grant dollars are a function of a conversation that County Council had with the community through a survey. That survey, in conjunction with a decision by County Council, helped form the categories that you will talk about a little bit later on that reflect information that the community said, we think it's important for Richland County to spend some of its allocation of funding in these areas in service to the community. So what you have is these grant dollars in these particular categories that are designed to address the very information that was expressed to council where there was a need. And so what you have this morning is information that's provided to you to help you navigate the process to apply for these funds and to understand ultimately what that looks like. So with that being said, I'm going to actually turn it over now to Lori Thomas. She's an assistant county administrator here at Richland County, and she represents work in our financial and budget, our organizations. And for the first time, I have an initial question before we get started. So yes, ma'am.
I was just asking about the deadline, because the deadline has moved
To October the 14th.
14th. Does that mean in terms of the rest of the timeline?
The only thing that's changed is you can now apply until October the 14th.
Okay, so the other timeline stays in place.
Other timeline stays in place.
Thank you.
Application deadline is now October the 14th. That is the only change to the deadlines. All right, thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us. As Mr. Brown said, my name's Lori Thomas. I'm Assistant County Administrator here, and the Budget and Grants Department that is actually overseeing the ARPA funds falls under my purview, and I'm happy to say that the county is excited that for the first time in history, we have this many federal dollars that has flowed into the economy, and for Richland County, that meant about $80 million. Which means specifically for groups in these categories, we've allocated over about 20% of our allocation. We're also doing lots of other things relative to public safety, public health, things of that nature, but these are dollars that will actually flow into the community. That means a lot of work on the part of our Budget and Grants Department and our third-party vendor who will be assisting us with this. And at this time, I'd like to sort of introduce you to them and let you meet the team that's been doing the heavy lifting. First is Abidesh Pandey. He's our Budget and Grants Director, or our Budget Director, with the grants that the county disperses actually under his purview. Next is Denise Teasdale. She's the Manager of Budget. Now, I am going to share a little secret with everybody. Denise is going to be leaving us. She is a valuable asset. I'm sure many of you will still see her in the community as she's taking on a leadership role with a nonprofit in the community. So if you run into Denise anywhere, tell her congratulations, but tell her she's going to be missed at Richland County. So she'll be transitioning on. However, the rest of our team will be taking care of you. That brings us to Mattia Pugh. Mattia is our grants manager in this area. She's actually working with Denise and Oscar Rosales, who is a budget analyst in this area. He's going to be helping as well with this. And last but not least in the Budget and Grants Department is Christian Stephen Phillips. Sorry, getting all my names mixed up. Christian Phillips down in the corner there. Christian's the senior accountant, so he's the one that has to keep track of all these dollars and where they flow from an accounting perspective. So he's very interested in all of this process because when they come back and say, where did it go, Christian's the one that's going to be answering those questions. Last but not least, helping our Budget and Grants Department is Sarah Harris. She's with Grant Thornton Public Sector. And Grant Thornton is the vendor that has been selected that will actually be ensuring that the applicants that apply for these that are to receive awards are compliant with U.S. Treasury guidance. And she will be working to answer your questions as well related to some of the grants specific questions that you may have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Abby to tell you a little bit about the categories of funding, and then we'll open it up to questions as well. Thank you again for being with us today.
Foxfire. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. No worries. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abidesh Pandey. I'm the Director of Budget and Grants Management with Richland County. On the behalf of Richland County, I welcome you, and I'm glad that you are able to join us today. As Mr. Brown said, that we received this around $80 million from the ARPA funding. Out of that, $16 million will be allocated for community-based projects and community organizations. And these allocations are kind of the buckets of funding were decided based on the community feedback as well as the county council, the way that they thought these are the priority areas. So these are definitely decided based on a large group of stakeholders involved in the process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a very quick overview about the different funding buckets or allocations for this $16 million. So the first is funding for small businesses, which is the $1 million for the funding for small businesses. One thing I would like to clarify here is that all the allocations or all the funding is available only for a business organization or nonprofit organization. These funds are not available to seek directly for any kind of individual citizens directly, but they can definitely seek these funds or be recipients of these funds via this organization, such as a nonprofit organization working in that particular area. So if you are an individual affected by negatively affected by the COVID pandemic, and if you would like to seek these benefits, definitely you need to go through a particular organization working in that area rather than applying individually to Richland County. So, and Sarah Harris from Grant Thornton will talk in detail about some of the eligibility and qualifications about what are kind of project-based questions. So, but that one thing I would like to clarify, these are only for the organizations, business organizations or the nonprofit organizations. So the first category, as I mentioned, which is the small business, for this particular category, that you don't need a 501c certificate. If you are a legal business entity operating in the Richland County, you will be able to apply for this funding category, which is a $1 million. The next one is the funding for nonprofit, which is the $1 million. The next one is the funding for workforce training, which is the $1 million. Now, all these different the buckets or kind of allocations, those are for the nonprofit organizations working in that particular area, and you need to have a 501c C3 certificate to be to have that certificate to apply for this funding. So if you're a nonprofit organization working in that workforce training area, you will be able to apply for $1 million, a grant totaling around $1 million. Then the next category is education assistance. That's a $1 million. Now funding, the next category is funding for senior assistance, which is the $1 million. I would like to have some clarification about this particular category. We made some corrections or kind of clarify the language here. Initially, we were talking about this, the funding for senior house repairs or housing cost repairs, but this is the senior assistance, so it's a very broad category rather than just the housing repair category. So just wanted to highlight that change here. Then the next one is funding for address food insecurity. That's $2 million. Then funding for broadband services in unserved or underserved areas. That's $2 million. Then funding for affordable housing. That's $4 million. Then funding for services for unhoused or homeless persons, that's $2 million. Then funding for youth or recreational services, that's $1 million. So altogether, as I said, like $16 million are allocated for these different categories. Now moving forward, Denise teased, or actually Matia Pugh, because Denise is, she decided to leave us. But as Ms. Lowry mentioned, she will be missed tremendously throughout the process here. But Matia Pugh is kind of stepping up in that role, and she will be giving you an overview about the Zoom grants. That is our application portal that all organizations will be using to fill up their applications. So the paper applications are not available. Only you can apply electronically via Zoom grant. And let Matia Pugh talk about the Zoom grant and the application process.
Good morning. Oh, not technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Good morning. So my name is Matia Pugh, and I am a grant manager here at Richland County. And I want to take a little bit of time today to walk through the Zoom grants portal with you all and show you what the application looks like once you go in to apply. So it's best accessed through the form that we just saw, the process document. At the top, there's a link that says click here, and that'll bring you to the Zoom grants portal. When you come to this page, if you do not have an account, you will need to create a new account, and that'll be right here at the new Zoom grants account. And there you'll just put your email, create a password, first name and last name. That's pretty straightforward. And create a new account. I'm going to log in. So when you log in, the first thing you'll come to is at the top of the page. This pretty much goes through the same thing that PDF goes through, and it tells you about the updated deadline, which is October 14th, and a little bit of information on the amounts allocated to each category, contact information for our team if you have any questions, and important links that'll give you good information that you should probably, what I would suggest to everyone is to click these links and to go through this information before you start your application, specifically the Treasury Guidelines. That'll give you guidance as far as reporting requirements, eligibility, and things like that. Now, it is a pretty lengthy document, but that'll give you some good information that you should know as you complete the application. Then when you scroll down, the first page is your summary. So this information is going to be the same for small businesses as well as nonprofits. It's pretty standard. Your application title, project name, your contact information, and your organization's information, telephone number, website, whatever information that is specific to your business. One of the questions I've been getting a lot is if I want to apply for the up to 3 categories, how do I indicate what category I'm applying for with this application? That's where you would enter this in your application title and project name. So for example, if you're a small business, you're gonna wanna put small business and then your business name. If you are a nonprofit, you can simply put nonprofit and your organization's name. If you are a nonprofit who is doing a project for workforce training, here's where you would put workforce training and then a little bit more information as far as your nonprofit's name. So that's how you would specify exactly what category of money you're applying for with this application. Your next tab is the application questions. Here is your organization tax filing status and service type, and then a couple of other questions about your project or program information. So here's where you'll go into detail and tell your story. If you are applying for a project that is new, here's where you'll tell us, this is what my plans are for the new project. This is what I plan to do with the funds, how you plan to address an issue, what the issue is. This is your what, when, where, how. In this section, you'll scroll down and you have your project description and goals. So here's where you'll go into a little bit of information about your target population, where you'll be doing this project, of course, which within Richland County, and things like, do they require permits? Administrative systems, there's a section for that. And I won't go through all of the questions, but there is about a little over 25 questions to complete here. Your organization's budget, will you require initial funding for your project prior to the beginning, and then your business and marketing plan. And then I'm gonna jump, went up too far. I'm gonna jump to the required attachments. So here's where you'll upload all the required attachments, being your statement of financial position and your statement of activity. So each organization, whether a small business or a nonprofit, should have a balance sheet, an income statement, and then you're gonna upload another required document is your detailed project budget. Here's where you will outline how you intend to spend the funds that you're asking for. So we need to account for everything that you're asking for, how you plan to disseminate that into the community through your project. Your other documents regarding your project, your Irs Determination Letter. Now, this is specific to nonprofits. However, it is a required attachment. So if you are applying for a small business, here's an opportunity where in the place of that determination letter, you may upload your business license. And then the next one, your proof of current registration with the state. Here's where you could upload a document with your EIN number and that information, and then of course your organization's W-9. You'll also have the budget tab, which is required, and that's pretty straightforward. You're gonna tell us how you plan to expend the funds. The tables, that is not a required tab, but the more information, the better is what I usually advise people of. And I think that is pretty much all I have to share. Does anyone have any questions on Zoom grants? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on if you're going to apply for more than one category, how, I guess I'm not clear. Are we getting multiple full applications?
Yes. So her question was, if you're going to apply for multiple categories, what are you supposed to submit multiple applications? Yes. So each nonprofit can submit up to 3 applications for 3 different categories. So you are going to submit 3 full separate applications for each pot of money that you intend to apply for. Yes, sir.
You have a been in business a full year, file taxes, can you still file for this?
Yes, you can. So, and I think that goes into if your project is, so all of this is about COVID-19. So if your project or your business is in response to something that happened through COVID-19, then you want to make sure that you upload information on how you plan to move forward using these funds. That would be very important. If there are no more questions, I will turn it over to Sarah Harris.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Sarah Harris, and I am with Grant Thornton. We are a financial advisory firm that is going to be assisting the county with this process. So I know it may seem initially very overwhelming, so I'm going to help try to simplify the process as much as I can, okay? So I have a rubric that I am going to show you, and this is generally what our federal evaluators are looking for. Let's see if I can find it here. Is this it right here?
If you go back to Zoom, right here, you can click the rubric right there.
Oh, oh, you have the scoring rubric inside of Zoom Grants. It's fancy now. Okay, so with this rubric, what we are going to try to do is in the first area, we have your project summary, and this is the area where you're going to share your story. So what I want you to think about is cause and effect for your project summary. Now, this is a really thoughtful supplement that the county did an excellent job with because we had a lot of questions about how do I frame my application? You have 25 questions and I have to answer, I have so many different needs that my organization has. So this is a tool that you can use as a supplement as you are framing your request to the county and also to the federal government. So essentially what you are doing is you are telling us your story. So think about cause and effect. Because of COVID-19, this is the impact it had on my particular business. I think I saw a hand up over here. Oh, okay. So that's what you're essentially going to be saying is this is how COVID-19 has impacted my organization, and you can go into more detail about that. So I like to give examples. So my brother has a small business, okay? He is a mechanic. Pre-pandemic, business was booming. He was really thriving. He was having to turn people down because he was getting so many calls in a day. When the pandemic hit, he could no longer help people because the supply chain shortages. So it affects everyone very differently. That's just one very small example. But there are many throughout this county and people that I've spoken to that have had small businesses where they may have had to let employees go or they had to turn their full-time employees into part-time employees. This is the area where you want to illustrate why this funding would be important to you and how COVID-19 has really impacted you, because you're always going to want to think COVID-19 impacted me this way. So that's 30 points here in this particular rubric, but we're going to scroll down to project impact. So this is the area in your application that you are going to describe your solution for this complex problem. So as an example, my brother had to scale down some services because he just had too many issues with his parking lot and he had to store a lot of vehicles. So if he were, as an example, to apply for this grant, he would probably apply under the small business, which has that $1 million threshold, and he would tell us, hey, My solution is to expand my parking lot because there's a vacant lot on the side of my business. So that's just an example of what you can do. But make sure you're gearing it towards your organization, towards your particular details. And so that's very important as you tell us your solution for how you are going to solve this problem. And also think about it this way too. If you were to be awarded federal dollars, what is your solution? How would that funding flow back into the community to help the communities that you serve? Okay, if you're a small business, you may not necessarily be helping a community that is underserved. In the case of my brother, he just has customers, but that's okay. You just want to tell us what population you serve and how you serve them, okay? So I'm going to scroll down here into your organizational background. So this area is really important with the federal government. With the feds, they are always looking for some detail of how you actually manage your funds because we want to be very responsible with the funds that they award us. So we want to know how you appropriately manage those funds through, let's say you have an accounting system that you use. If you utilize, as an example, Quicken Books to manage all of your finances for your business, then you would elaborate how you utilize that system. You know, share those details with us because the federal government ultimately is going to look to see if you can responsibly and appropriately manage your funds. So if they grant you an award, they want to know that you have the ability to do that. Now, another area of this section that you may have to look out for is segregation of duties, as we call it in finance. But basically, this is the area where we say we don't want only one person handling all of the funds. There needs to be some checks and balance system in your accounting processes. So this is the area where you're going to tell us, as you're serving these communities, and I'll give you another example. I had a young lady I spoke with who is a very young nonprofit. She has a president, she has a vice president, she has a board of members that actually check their accounting systems. So those are the type of details you want to include in your organizational background. Now, if you are a small business, ARPA funding is very diverse at this time. And you have an idea that you know it by you just have faith that your idea, your business plan, if executed with the right amount of money, could really help this community. Detail that within this, okay? So you don't have to have years and years of experience. Again, the federal government is looking to see if you have the appropriate mechanisms in place organizationally to take care of this grant. So from start to finish, do you have the ability to really handle the funding that will be executed throughout this process? So that's a really important part of this. So that kind of leads here into the budget category. So as the evaluators go through this process, they're going to look to see about those financial management processes. And again, your story is very important in this process as well. So you have your programmatic side of the grant and your financial side of the grant. Those two things, they're kind of a yin-yang. They balance one another. So you have to tell us, the impact COVID-19 has had on your organization, if you were to be awarded grant funding, how you would manage it, and how you would close the grant out too. Do you have enough staff to adequately handle the amount of funding that you're requesting? So I will say, if my brother were to apply for this grant and he shot all the way up to $1 million in one category, I would not probably ever honor that type of grant application, okay? Because you want to be appropriate with your request. So make sure as you're going through this that you're putting in some details, okay? Things that I recommend. Financial statements. So just like when you have to, pay your taxes at the end of every year, you have a lot of different supporting documents that you have to show to prove that you paid those taxes out. And so those are the type of things that you're going to look for. So have everything ready to go. And as you start going through this process, I am going to give you my telephone number. If you start getting, turned around and maybe it's just you feel really overwhelmed, give me a call, okay? Because really, we want you to incorporate a lot of detail, but I also realize and try to put myself in my shoes when I started working in grants a long time ago. there are areas that I really didn't understand about grant applications, okay? I was a young grant writer and I didn't understand. So I had some really amazing talent around me that helped grow me. So this may be the first grant application some of you have ever written. So this is all new to you. So I understand. If you start getting hung up, please give us a call so we can help you walk through that process. So there are only 25 questions on here. These are pretty standard to normal grant applications, but the supplement is a really great way for you to understand what the evaluators are going to be looking for in each of those categories, okay? So my telephone number is 803-231-3093. Again, my name is Sarah Harris with Grant Thornton, and that telephone number is 803-231-3093. So do I have any questions? Yes, sir.
There was a original mention in terms of how COVID impacted you. Are you referring to the organization or the population served?
Both. That's a very good question. So the gentleman asked, when he is applying for his application, are we describing the population that's served or the organizational pitfalls that you may have had because of COVID? It's both. Give us as much detail as possible. Put that within the application. That helps us to know the communities that you serve. So again, this is very community-based. This application and the rubric was designed with community at the forefront of this process. So you do want to show us and demonstrate that you had a particular population that was heavily impacted. So with our small businesses, that may not be the case, but with our nonprofits, you serve a lot of diverse needs. If that has been heavily impacted, please demonstrate that within your application. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about 2 CFR 200?
Yes, okay. So 2 CFR 200 is a lot of the language that you are going to see in this rubric. And essentially the way you can break that down is that is an audit, okay? Every federal dollar that flows back into our community is subject to audit. So you have to be very careful about what you request, how you spend the money. So the federal government really wants to know, can you appropriately manage all of these funds, okay? You have to really demonstrate in that application, even if you are a young business, I want to leave this encouragement with you, you can completely fill this application out with your business plan, your proposed idea, but be very highly detailed in that project summary that you provide to us. Tell us and walk us through your steps that you would take to execute this process. What we're seeing, and like Ms. Lori said, this is a historical time with this particular funding. We are seeing a lot of diverse projects that are being funded, but you have to be incredibly detailed. Provide us financial statements. If you're requesting, I'll give this example. If you're requesting $10,000 in a very specific type of restaurant equipment that you are looking into, provide us with quotes, something that shows us and demonstrates that you have done this process, that this is a legitimate request that you are providing to us in the application. So those are just some examples. Any other questions? Okay, and again, okay, sure.
Is there a ceiling and a floor in terms of what we could ask for in the grant?
The only ceiling is the threshold that is described. And so as I would say, the recommendation is to apply for the funding that's appropriate to your organization. If your operation takes X number of dollars to conduct throughout a year, then demonstrate that to us, and then we will go through there to determine if that is a fair and reasonable request. Obviously, that is very subjective right now. This grant is incredibly broad, it's incredibly diverse. So that's why including very specific operational expense details, that will really help state your case.
And I'm guessing that this should be considered one-time funding? So in terms of project support, should not support it ongoing activity, but here's funds for one time initially?
Correct. So what we do know is that obviously this is a historical time where we have grant funding flowing back directly into communities. This has really never happened before. So as a grant person, it's just really amazing to me that we're seeing this type of funding. So we could say this is not a continuation grant, but we never know. It may have some success. It may stimulate the economy throughout the nation as they start evaluating metrics for that. We never know. It might turn into a type of continuation grant. So for the moment, no. Yes, ma'am.
Do you, I know that you may have received some applications already, and those folks who haven't looked at their application lately are thinking September 30th. So are you reviewing the grants as they come in, or are you waiting until October 14th?
The evaluation process is not first come, first serve. So it will be after the closeout of the enrollment process. That is when the evaluation work will start being conducted. So you still have until the 14th to get those applications in, and we have a system, administrator rights, I think will be able to send out a notification for updates with those deadlines. Any other questions? Okay, so I would just say we don't have any other questions, but be very transparent about how COVID-19 has impacted the services that you deliver to your clients or the communities that you serve. And as you go through the application, if you just simply feel overwhelmed, please give us a call so we can help guide you, okay? All right, well, it was so nice having all of you here today with us.
Thank you all. That being all, we appreciate your being here and ask you to have a great day. Thanks.